I still remember the day we made our greatest mistake. Actually, that's a lie. I remember every single detail of that day with the kind of clarity that haunts you during those quiet moments when you're trying to sleep, and your brain decides to replay your worst decisions on loop. My name is Vorthrax Kellin, and I used to be a strategic operations officer for the Talmarian Collective. Note the past tense there. These days, I'm what you might call a cautionary tale with a pension. The humans had been expanding through our sector for about 30 cycles, quietly, peacefully even. They'd set up trading posts, established diplomatic channels, and generally behaved like reasonable beings who understood how galactic civilization worked. They smiled a lot. They made jokes that often went over our cranial ridges. They seemed harmless. That should have been our first clue, really. The Talmarian Collective controlled 47 star systems. We had the largest fleet in 3 sectors. Our military academies were legendary. We'd conquered, absorbed, or diplomatically crushed every species we'd encountered for the last 600 years. We were, in our own estimation, the apex predators of this corner of the galaxy. When the humans politely requested mining rights in the Kelvor system, the High Council laughed. When they offered to pay fair market rates, the Council laughed harder. When they suggested a joint operation with profit sharing, several Council members had to leave the chamber because they were laughing so hard they couldn't breathe properly. Grand Marshal Throvik, may his memory serve as a warning, decided this was the perfect opportunity to remind the galaxy why nobody messed with the Collective. He issued an ultimatum. The humans had 10 standard days to evacuate all their personnel from our territory. Any ships remaining after that deadline would be seized or destroyed. The human ambassador, a woman named Jennifer Okoye, listened to the ultimatum with a pleasant smile that never quite reached her eyes. That smile probably should have worried us more than it did. She said, and I quote, "That would be unfortunate." Just those 3 words. Then she left. We took that as acceptance of our superiority. We were idiots. 8 days later, right on schedule, human ships began leaving our territory. Every single one. Their trading posts powered down. Their diplomats went home. Their merchant vessels pulled out of our stations. Within 48 hours, it was like they'd never been there at all. The High Council celebrated. Throvik gave speeches about Talmarian strength and resolve. We'd faced down the newcomers, and they'd blinked first. It was glorious. Then, on day 11, the first human warship entered our space. It didn't sneak in. It didn't try to hide. It just appeared at the edge of the Kelvor system, broadcast its identity on all frequencies, and waited. The ship was called Consequences, which, in hindsight, was probably meant as a hint. We sent 3 cruisers to intercept it. Standard procedure, show of force. The human ship would scan our vessels, realize it was outgunned, and retreat with its tail between its legs. Except it didn't retreat. The captain of our lead cruiser, a veteran named Silkrath Torm, hailed the human ship and demanded its surrender. The response came back in perfect Talmarian. "Negative. You have 10 minutes to withdraw. This is your only warning." Silkrath was a decorated officer with 40 years of service. He'd fought in 12 major campaigns. He found the human response hilarious. He opened fire. The Consequences destroyed all 3 cruisers in 17 seconds. Not damaged, not disabled. Destroyed. Turned them into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and debris. Our ships never even got their shields fully up. That got our attention. The High Council went into emergency session. Throvik stopped giving speeches and started giving orders. We mobilized the first fleet, 20 capital ships, 46 cruisers, over 100 support vessels. We sent them to the Kelvor system with orders to eliminate the human ship and remind the galaxy that you don't humiliate the Talmarian Collective. The Consequences was gone by the time they arrived, but it had left a gift, a buoy, broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple. Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done. That was followed by a data packet. Coordinates, timestamps, fleet compositions. They were our naval deployments. All of them. Every ship, every station, every defense platform. The humans knew where everything was. Throvik declared it a bluff. Misinformation designed to make us doubt ourselves. He ordered the first fleet to split up and hunt down human vessels throughout our territory. The first fleet jumped to hyperspace in battle formation. It was magnificent. I watched it from the command center on Talmar Prime, feeling a surge of pride in our military might. 12 hours later, the First Fleet ceased to exist. Not all at once. That might have been cleaner. No, the humans took them apart piece by piece, ship by ship. They'd set up ambushes at every single jump point. They knew exactly where our ships would emerge from hyperspace and had been waiting with weapons hot. Our captains never had a chance. They'd drop out of hyperspace and find human ships already in position, already firing. By the time our crews could orient themselves, it was over. The few ships that survived did so by refusing to engage. They jumped away immediately, abandoning the battle. We called them cowards. Later, we'd call them the smart ones. In one day, we lost 60% of our fleet. The High Council finally stopped posturing and started panicking. Throvik was still insisting we could win. We just needed to consolidate our forces, establish defensive positions, and make the humans pay for every system they tried to take. The humans had other ideas. They didn't invade. They didn't occupy. They just started destroying things. Mining stations, refueling depots, orbital factories, anything that supported our military infrastructure. They'd appear, demolish their target, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. They moved through our territory like ghosts, always 3 steps ahead of us, and they were fast. Stars above, they were fast. Our ships could jump to hyperspace, sure, but the calculations took time. Astrogation, safety protocols, all that sensible stuff that keeps you from jumping into a star or getting ripped apart by gravitational shears. The humans apparently decided safety protocols were for species who weren't trying to make a point. Their ships jumped with insane precision. They'd appear, unleash hell, and disappear before we could even target them properly. Our tactical computers couldn't keep up, neither could our crews. After 2 weeks, we'd lost 30 systems worth of infrastructure and most of our remaining fleet. The humans hadn't lost a single ship, not one. We kept waiting for them to demand surrender, to issue terms, to do something that made sense in the context of normal warfare. They didn't. They just kept destroying things. Throvik finally cracked during a council session. He was ranting about honor and strength when one of the junior officers made the mistake of pointing out that honor wasn't going to rebuild our shattered fleets. Throvik shot him, right there in the council chamber, used his sidearm and dropped the kid where he stood. That's when I realized we weren't just losing the war, we were losing our minds. I started looking at the data, really looking at it, without the filter of pride or propaganda. The pattern was obvious once you stopped trying to deny it. The humans weren't fighting us. They were teaching us a lesson. Every target they hit was military or military adjacent. They hadn't touched civilian populations, hadn't bombed cities, hadn't done any of the things we would have done in their position. They were just systematically dismantling our ability to wage war. It was almost respectful, in a terrifying sort of way. I took my analysis to the council, suggested, very carefully, that perhaps we should consider opening negotiations. Maybe apologize for the whole get out or die ultimatum thing. Throvik called me a coward. Several other council members agreed. I was stripped of my rank and escorted from the chamber. That probably saved my life. 3 hours later, the human fleet appeared in orbit around Talmar Prime. Not a raiding force, not a surgical strike. The entire human fleet, hundreds of ships, hanging in our sky like a swarm of metal locusts. They didn't fire immediately. They just sat there, weapons powered but not locked on, waiting. The council chamber went silent for the first time in weeks. Even Throvik couldn't find anything to say. Then a transmission came through. Audio only. A human voice, calm and almost conversational. Grand Marshal Throvik, you are hereby summoned to unconditional surrender. You have 1 hour to present yourself aboard our flagship. Failure to comply will result in the immediate destruction of all military targets on Talmar Prime, followed by a blockade that will last until your civilization collapses from lack of resources. We're very patient. We can wait. The choice is yours. Throvik found his voice. We will never surrender to you. The Talmarian Collective bows to no one. We will fight to the last soldier, the last ship, the last breath. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, and I swear I could hear the sigh. We were afraid you'd say that. Stand by. One of the human ships broke formation. Just one. It was smaller than their capital ships but moved with predatory grace. It dropped into low orbit over the parade grounds where we held our military ceremonies. The same parade grounds where Throvik had given his speeches about Talmarian superiority. The ship fired once. The parade grounds ceased to exist, vaporized. There was just a perfectly circular crater where they'd been, glowing with residual heat. The human voice returned. That was a warning shot, targeted at empty ground. The next one won't be. 59 minutes. Throvik's face went through several interesting color changes. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. One of the other council members, Velixia Gron, stood up. She was old, pragmatic, and had been arguing for peace since the beginning. Everyone had ignored her. She looked at Throvik with something between pity and contempt. Get out. What? Get out of this chamber. You're done. Your pride has cost us everything. Now leave before what's left of us decides you'd look better decorating that crater. Throvik looked around the chamber. Every single council member was staring at him with the same expression. He'd led them to disaster, and they were done following. He left, just turned and walked out. We never saw him again. Rumor has it he took a shuttle and disappeared into the outer colonies. Good riddance. Velixia contacted the humans, accepted their terms. Unconditional surrender. I thought that would be the end of it. The humans would occupy our worlds, strip our resources, maybe enslave us if we were lucky. It's what we would have done. I was wrong again. They didn't occupy us. They didn't take anything. They just parked their fleet in orbit, set up a monitoring network, and issued one simple rule. No military vessels, no weapons platforms, no warships. Defensive systems only, and even those were strictly regulated. Break the rule, and they'd be back. Then they offered us trade agreements, technology exchanges, educational programs. They wanted to help us rebuild. I couldn't understand it. We'd been ready to crush them. We'd fired first. By every standard of galactic warfare, they had the right to wipe us out. I got my answer during a meeting with one of their officers, a man named James Kowalski. I asked him why they hadn't just destroyed us. He looked at me like I'd said something stupid, which, in retrospect, I had. Why would we do that? You're not our enemies. You're just people who made a bad decision. We don't kill people for being stupid. We'd have to depopulate half our own planets. But we attacked you. Yeah, you did. And we defended ourselves. War's over now. Time to move on. Just like that? He shrugged. Just like that. Look, Vorthrax. Humanity's been fighting wars for thousands of years. We're really, really good at it. But you know what we've learned? I shook my head. Winning the war is the easy part. The hard part is what comes after. You can conquer people, sure, but then what? You've got a planet full of folks who hate you, and you've got to garrison it forever, and eventually they'll make your life miserable enough that it wasn't worth taking in the first place. Or you can show them there's a better way. Help them rebuild, treat them with respect, make them want to be your friends instead of your subjects. It takes longer, but the results last. I must have looked skeptical because Kowalski laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh, more like he'd heard this reaction before. You don't believe me? That's fine. Watch and learn. And I did watch. We all did. The humans kept their word. Every single promise they made, they followed through on. They helped us rebuild our infrastructure, not as conquerors but as partners. They shared technology, not their best stuff, obviously, but enough to get us back on our feet. They were also incredibly annoying about safety regulations. Turns out, all those protocols we thought were slowing us down, the ones the humans apparently ignored during the war, they actually used them. They just had better computers and training. When they found out how we'd been operating our hyperspace drives, 3 different human engineers had what I can only describe as simultaneous breakdowns. You've been jumping with these safety margins. One of them, a woman named Patricia Mwangi, stared at our specifications like they'd personally insulted her family. It's a miracle you haven't scattered half your ships across 3 dimensions. No wonder you were slow. You were too busy not dying. We upgraded our systems, mostly because the humans refused to share jump routes with us until we did. Something about not wanting to scrape our molecules off their hulls when we inevitably miscalculated. But here's the thing that really got me. The thing that made me understand just how badly we'd misread the humans from the start. About 6 months after the surrender, there was an incident in the Krythos sector. Pirates, not particularly sophisticated ones, just opportunists who figured the collective was weak and easy prey now. They hit one of our cargo convoys, killed 17 crew members, took the ships. We had nothing to respond with. Our fleet was gone, our defenses were limited, and we were still rebuilding. The High Council, what was left of it anyway, sent a formal request to the Human Monitoring Force. We asked for help. It was humiliating. The response came back in less than an hour, already on it. A human strike force intercepted the pirates 4 hours later. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted 11 minutes. The pirates surrendered immediately once they realized who they were fighting. The humans returned our ships, returned our cargo, even returned the bodies of our crew members so we could perform proper funeral rites. Then they did something that absolutely floored us. They turned the pirates over to our justice system. Didn't keep them, didn't try them under human law, just handed them over and said, "Your people, your laws, your justice." Felixia Gron cried during the ceremony when we took custody of the prisoners. I'd never seen her cry before. She was a hard woman, shaped by decades of political fighting and military service. "They respect us," she whispered to me after. "After everything we did, after all our arrogance, they actually respect us." That was the moment I truly understood what the humans had done. They hadn't just defeated us militarily. They'd defeated the entire philosophy that had made us think we needed to fight in the first place. We'd believed might made right, that the strong deserved to dominate the weak, that conquest was natural and proper. The humans showed us something different. They showed us that real strength wasn't about crushing others. It was about lifting them up. That the truly powerful didn't need to prove it with violence. It was a hard lesson, made harder by the fact that we'd forced them to teach it to us the hard way. Time passed. Years, actually. The Human Monitoring Force gradually reduced their presence, not because they were abandoning us, but because we didn't need them anymore. We'd rebuilt, grown, changed. The new generation of Talmarians grew up with human teachers, human friends, human influences. They learned our history, of course. They learned about the war, but they learned it as a cautionary tale, not as a source of pride. My own daughter, Kessa, ended up attending university on Earth. She came back speaking 3 human languages, and with ideas about representative government that gave the council fits. Good fits, though. Productive ones. She brought a human boy home once. Nice kid named Timothy Rask. Polite, smart, completely terrified of me, which I found entertaining. "Dad," Kessa said during dinner, "stop glaring at him. You're being ridiculous." "I'm not glaring. This is just my face." "You're definitely glaring," Timothy offered helpfully. Then immediately looked like he regretted speaking. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in years. "Relax, Timothy. I'm not going to hurt you. I learned my lesson about fighting humans. Besides, my daughter would probably space me if I upset you." "Absolutely would," Kessa confirmed cheerfully. We had a good dinner. Timothy told stories about Earth, about human history, about all the times humans had fought each other before they figured out there were better ways to solve problems. "Wait," I interrupted. "You fought amongst yourselves? With the same level of intensity you fought us?" "Oh, way worse," Timothy said. "We had this thing called World War II. Made your war with us look like a minor disagreement. Killed millions. Nearly destroyed our entire civilization. But you survived, and you learned, eventually. Took a while. Lots of mistakes, but yeah, we figured it out." He paused, then added, "That's why we didn't hold the war against you. We've been where you were. We know what it's like to think military power is the answer to everything. We grew past it. We figured you could too." After dinner, I went out to my observation deck, looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling, keeping the peace, protecting trade routes, helping species who got in over their heads, just like they'd done for us, my communicator chimed. Priority message from the council. They wanted me back. Turns out, being the person who'd called for surrender early, even if nobody listened, gave you credibility in the new order. They wanted me to help establish a joint Talmarian human defense initiative, a real partnership, not occupation. We'd provide ships and personnel, They'd provide training and coordination. Together, we'd help keep this sector of space safe. I accepted. How could I not? The first planning meeting was held on a human station orbiting Talmar Prime, the same orbit where their fleet had appeared all those years ago. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Kowalski was there. He'd been promoted several times but still remembered me. Vorthrax, good to see you. Heard you're coming back to strategic operations. Apparently someone thinks I learned something from watching you dismantle my fleet. You definitely did. You wrote that analysis of our tactics, right? The one that's being taught in military academies now? I had. It had taken me 2 years to really understand what the humans had done, how they'd used speed, precision, and perfect intelligence to fight a completely asymmetric war, how they'd won without becoming monsters in the process. I did. I wanted future generations to understand, not just the tactics, but the philosophy behind them. The philosophy? That war should be the last resort. That when you do fight, you fight to end the conflict, not to satisfy your ego. That the goal is always peace, not victory. Kowalski smiled. Sounds like you really did learn. I had good teachers, expensive teachers, but good ones. The meeting went well. We hammered out the basics of the partnership, decided on ship configurations, patrol routes, command structures. It was professional, cooperative, nothing like the antagonistic relationship we'd started with. As we were leaving, I stopped Kowalski. Can I ask you something? Something I've wondered about for years? Sure, that message. Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done. Who decided on that phrasing? It was perfect. Arrogant enough to get our attention, but accurate enough that we couldn't dismiss it. He grinned. That was Admiral Okoye, Jennifer's sister, actually. She has a gift for dramatic declarations. Drives the diplomatic corps crazy, but the fleet loves her. It worked. We definitely paid attention. That was the idea. Look, Vorthrax, humanity's been fighting for our entire history. We're good at it because we've had so much practice. But we're also tired of it. When we have to fight, we fight to win quickly and decisively, not because we love violence, but because we want it over with. So you can get back to peace. Exactly. War is loud and messy and expensive. Peace is where all the good stuff happens. Trade, science, art. Dinner with your daughter's boyfriend. I laughed. You heard about that? Kessa told half the station. She's very proud of making you laugh. We parted as colleagues, as friends, even. It was a strange feeling, given our history. Years continued to pass. The partnership flourished. Talmarian ships, with human-designed upgrades and human-trained crews, patrolled alongside human vessels. We stopped 3 pirate operations, mediated 2 territorial disputes, and rescued the survivors of a colony ship that had suffered catastrophic systems failure. We were good at it. Turns out, when you spend centuries building a military machine, you develop some useful skills. We just needed to redirect them toward protection instead of conquest. The High Council eventually dissolved itself, replaced by a representative assembly, still called the Council, but fundamentally different. Felixia Gron served as its first elected chair. She was 87 and sharp as ever. I attended her inauguration. So did Kowalski and half the human diplomatic corps. During her speech, Felixia said something that stuck with me. We Talmarians spent 600 years trying to prove we were strong. It took humanity 3 weeks to show us we were wrong. Not wrong about being strong, but wrong about what strength means. Real strength is admitting mistakes. Real power is choosing peace. Real victory is building something better than what came before. The assembly chamber erupted in applause. Humans and Talmarians together, celebrating not a military triumph, but a philosophical one. That night, I took Kessa and Timothy back to my observation deck. 3 generations now, counting Timothy's presence as a sign of things to come. Dad, Kessa said, do you ever regret how things happened? The war, I mean. I thought about it, really thought about it. I regret the people we lost. I regret the destruction. I regret that we were too proud to learn the easy way. But I'm grateful for what came after. We needed to be broken before we could be rebuilt into something better. The humans could have destroyed us. Instead, they saved us. From ourselves, mostly. Timothy was looking up at the stars. You know what's funny? Humans tell basically the same story about ourselves. How many times we nearly destroyed our own civilization before we figured it out. Makes you wonder if that's just how intelligent species work. We all have to touch the fire before we believe it's hot. Wise words for someone who's afraid of my father, Kessa teased. I'm not afraid. I'm appropriately cautious. There's a difference. We all laughed. It was a good moment. A peaceful one. Somewhere in the archives, there's still a recording of that final message from Human Command. Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done. They certainly did. They showed us how to fight with precision and purpose. How to win without losing yourself in the process. How to end a war in weeks instead of dragging it out for years. And most importantly, how to build something worthwhile in the aftermath. The younger generation sometimes asks me what it was like, facing humanity in battle. They want stories of glory and heroism. I tell them the truth. It was terrifying. It was humbling. It was over before we realized we'd lost. But I also tell them about what came after. About the humans who helped us rebuild. About the partnerships we forged. About the better civilization we became. They defeated us, I always finish, but they didn't destroy us. That's the difference between conquest and leadership, between domination and strength. They were strong enough to show mercy, wise enough to offer help, patient enough to wait for us to become partners instead of subjects. Some of them get it immediately, others take time. That's fine. Some lessons can't be rushed. As for me, I'm old now, retired, again. Final time, probably. I spend my days on that observation deck, watching ships pass overhead. Talmarian ships, human ships, ships from a dozen other species who've joined our little alliance. Sometimes I see young officers, fresh from the academy, heading out on their first patrols. They're eager, confident, ready to protect the peace. They have no idea how close we came to losing everything, how our arrogance nearly destroyed us, how lucky we were that the humans chose to teach instead of exterminate. Maybe that's okay. Maybe every generation needs to find their own path to wisdom. But I remember, I'll always remember, the day we chose war, and the day humanity showed us there was a better way.